am Anna, the founder of Data Science Salon, and today I'm streaming live from our headquarters, which is directly located here in the heart of Miami, just a few blocks from the Design District. And it's really nice to be back. It's been actually a couple, maybe almost 6 weeks since we've done this, so it's really nice to be back. And I'm really excited today to host Sumedha Rai, Senior Data Scientist at Acorns Grow, for a deep dive into ethics at scale, advancing fairness and fintech through AI, which is quite a complicated topic. So really excited to dive in. And with her extensive background in AI and machine learning, Sumedha will really go deep into the critical role of ethical practices, especially in fintech AI applications. And I look forward to learning from your experience in navigating these complexities, because the industry is so highly regulated, as we know. So thank you so much for joining us for this DSS Break episode, Sumedha.
Yeah, I'm psyched to be here. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Nice. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what got you interested in data science in the first place?
I think I was always into technology. I was always a computer scientist at heart. I started my journey by actually doing a master's in finance. My relationship with finance has been longer than my relationship with tech. And I started as an investment banker. I went into private equity. But the funny thing was that I was always itching to understand their models and algorithms while understanding them. uh, so I spent a few years over there, but then data science was up and coming. It was the rise of data. And I thought I should pivot to this field because it was something that was really interesting to me every single day. Like every single day, I was thinking about these new models that were coming in, consuming news online. So I spent 2 years working in financial predictive modeling with the Reserve Bank of India, which is their like central bank. And I did some really cool work over there. It actually inspired me to continue working in this field. And then I did another master's in AI and data science from NYU. And since then, I've worked with these really cool companies, some in healthcare, some in algorithmic quantitative trading, SaaS, supply chain. And in my current role, I'm working with a micro investments firm, and I do a lot of natural language processing.
Cool. Well, that's such an amazing background and 2 masters. That's a lot. That's a lot, but very useful, I'm sure, for both, to have both for the work that you're doing. So can you share maybe a couple of methods for identifying biases in AI models, and particularly in fintech?
Right. So even before we begin ways to identify it, we need to understand what bias actually is. In very simple terms, bias means that your AI model, is basically coming up with unfair results for a certain subsection of the population, or a certain class, and it's being discriminatory in nature. And of course, while we're training machines to be more human, we don't want this to happen, even if it is coming from certain historical ways that our society was made. So to identify where the bias is coming from, you should really understand the ways how bias can seep into your data and your models. One of the most common ways that bias comes in is when you're collecting your data. So if there is an inconsistent data collection process, for instance, you went out there and you collected data from only a certain neighborhood, only a certain income bracket, or a certain profession, that you're already creating this sample bias, or like a selection bias. So for instance, if you're a fintech company and you see a lot of online transactions, and that's where you collected your data from. Now, a person who actually goes and deposits a check in person, it's a legit way, but your data does not cover that. So your machine learning model is going to think of this as a new thing, and it's going to think of this as, it's going to flag it. So you first of all want to make sure that your data collection process is really robust and it's representative of the whole population. Everything that all the people that you could be targeting, it's representative of that. The second thing is, there are times when you're treating your data. I give this very common example, which is a beautiful way to describe how you can create bias. You're a fintech company, and you want to see the number of ATM withdrawals, and you have a big data set, but 10 people within that data set are actually traveling abroad quite a lot of times, and they're doing a lot of ATM withdrawals. Now, assuming you were trying to impute missing values for this feature, and a common technique is to take the mean. You don't know that your outliers are so big in number, and you imputed the mean, and now you consequently created a feature that is biased in favor of ATM withdrawals outside the country. Now this bias is going to seep into your results, so you want to make sure that even when you're treating the data, it's good. There are other examples like putting in your subjective reality into the model. But basically, yeah, at every step of the process, you want to identify that you are being very thorough with your collection process, your pre-processing process, and even your modeling process.
That sounds like very like that you have to be very careful not to put bias in there. So thanks for sharing it. That's a great answer. And what are some of the most striking impacts of bias you've observed in AI systems? And I mean, I've heard some crazy stories, but I'm sure you have some.
Yes, actually, this system of introducing bias comes, I think, from our society as a whole. There was a time somebody was covering a talk. I think a former head of ethics of Twitter. He was talking about how historically Chicago was denying loans to a certain subsect of the population altogether. And this is 20 years ago. But then there are still ways to be using this data in your current models. So 20 years later, that data can still, introduce bias in your models. Some of the things that you see in fintech terms are in fintech companies are very much related to lending. So a certain subsection of the population is not going to get access to the loans altogether, or they're going to get access to smaller loans. Another thing is a class might get higher mortgage rates than the remaining people. A very common example is when you are a firm that, or like a union that understands your internal community better than an external community. So, for instance, if there's a person who's coming in from, say, Vietnam, goes to a very nice college, has like really cool credit history, working at Google over here, but applies for a credit card. It might be more difficult for this person to get a credit card than a community college graduate within your own city, just because you understand that person and the way the things work better over here. And this might even like translate to getting lower limits, credit limits. And again, I'm talking about examples that where you don't have information, but my point really is that your basis of taking a decision should not be based on one variable alone. So it can like translate into some of the results, and even though you're erring on the side of caution, that's considered bias.
Yes, I get it is. It is. That's true. And what strategies have you seen proven to be effective in reducing this bias in like A application, especially in micro investments and fintech firms?
Uh, right. So one of the things that as I was highlighting before, is that you want to make sure, first of all, if it's a protected class, or if it's a variable that can be considered, the result of that can be considered bias, please do not use it explicitly. But then there are also times that I have heard people saying, I don't think that my model can be biased because I didn't use this variable. Now, the funny thing is, bias does not seep into your model just because variable is not being used. There are certain other things around that variable that will inform that bias. So what you want to do is, when you're preparing your data set, you want to overlay them with some demographic data. You want to see which of these features that you have put in, is it getting skewed for like a certain subgroup of population, and maybe fair or unfair. So you really want to understand your data, and you want to make sure that if that's happening, you either remove some of the variables that might be problematic, or you collect more variables so that your decision is not solely based on one variable alone. So sometimes it's not easy to just remove the bias altogether, but what we want to make sure is that the decision is not based on like 100% weight or like a 95% weight given to one class that is giving out biased results. So for instance, if you're looking for like credit decisions, even though there is a variable that like is considered a class or a protected class or like a gender or something, you want to make sure that you're including as many credit related variables as possible. Any proxies for activity related to transactions, repayments, any chargebacks, withdrawals, all of that information is also collected. So when you enrich your data set this way, you're not basically basing your decision on that one variable where the result might be considered bias. It is to say, like, well, a young person might get a lower credit limit, but well, some young people who were taking care of their credit history very well and doing very well in the past also get higher limits. You just want to make sure that that is also happening.
Yeah, no, true. No, thanks. That's a great answer. And what do you see as the future challenges and opportunities for integrating ethical considerations into AI development and finance?
Uh, many, so many. First of all, it's not going to happen by itself. You need to put in time and resources, and you need to make sure that you are giving it the attention that it deserves. So, for instance, there are a lot of, you might be surprised at how many companies basically are running after deployment, and that's fine, but this is a crucial step of the process, and give it the attention that it deserves. Another thing that I'm a little skeptical about is that everybody is jumping on the Gen AI bandwagon.
Oh
So
my God. I mean, it's taken over like all the actual problems that people are dealing
yeah, the problem with that right now, and I said, these models are pre-trained, and we do not have access to the data collection process. It's like a black box model. So we are, in a way, losing access to reduce the margin of error that we can do in the modeling process.
with.
And if you just treat that as the ground truth, and you sort of say, I'm going to wash my hands of this problem because I didn't train it, that's not the way to go. You're actually using the Gen AI model to inform your results. So it is absolutely your problem. So one of the challenges that I see is this blame game. I didn't do this, he didn't do this, they didn't do this. Like, who is the problem resting with? Every person who is informed in who's a part of the pipeline, who's a part of the modeling process, is they are accountable. Take accountability, take responsibility, and do the efforts that need to be done. And the other thing is that sometimes I don't see teams being they're not interdisciplinary in nature. The model is coming only out of a group of data scientists. You need subject matter experts. You need your team to be diverse as well. So there are certain times that I, as a data scientist, might not pick up on a bias, but a person who's a subject matter expert is going to pick up on certain ways to make, say, like, I'm creating a fraud model, right? I work with this person who tells me this actually is a normal way to make an investment. This time period is actually a delay on the part of the bank. It is not the delay on the part of the customer. This chargeback was raised because of like an automated decision that happened. It is not, it's not a flag. Now, when I take all of these subject matter expert opinions and I inform my model based on these, I actually am able to reduce a lot of false positives. So you want to make sure that your teams are more interdisciplinary, and that's one of the challenge. Most of the models come from one team alone.
Yeah, and I think that what you're talking about doesn't just happen in your industry. I feel like like everybody always wants to pass on the blame, but I feel like here it's really important. Like it's actually affecting people's lives, right? So, I think it sounds like collaboration is really important in this regard.
Very, very important.
So,
Yeah.
and I think my next question was about kind of advice for practitioners to help them incorporate this consideration into the projects effectively.
Right. I think one of the things that I have spoken about is that you need to make sure that you have the time and effort that is needed to make sure that your models are monitored over time. And there are certain times that even though you might have monitored your model right after the results have come out, we call them input drift, concept drift, which means that the relationship between the target variable and the feature set has changed over time, or the distribution of the feature set has changed over time. So you want to make sure that this monitoring is done over time. And there are, actual auditing techniques that are done every month, every quarter, um, specifically based on biased reporting. These reports need to be a part of the organization, a part of the modeling process that you're working in. So that's my advice, that make it a formal process. Again, have a forum ready for yourself, that if I am creating the model, I should have the results in front of a diverse forum coming from different places. If it's a risk model, there should be a practitioner from risk, a practitioner from legal, a practitioner from computer science, it should be a forum where people are able to give their opinions. And you would be surprised at how our thoughts start developing when we see different opinions. A single thought can make you realize something very different, but you need the nudge from that thought. So having an interdisciplinary forum, a team that has a collaborative effort that I mentioned, is very important, and I would encourage everyone to do that.
Thank you so much. No, that's a great answer. I think I'm really excited to learn more in New York. And one last question I didn't want to ask, because I asked everybody, because we have a lot of young folks and people that want to get into data science and AI. What would you recommend, or do you have any tips for people who want to get into this hot space right now?
This is, again, a personal opinion, but I feel that a structured approach really helped me instead of picking up pieces from here and there. So if you're a person who who wants to actually code or be an individual contributor, make sure that you understand the fundamentals, the assumptions, and the math behind your models. Because at some point in your modeling process, or at some point in your career as an AI practitioner, you will need these. There are certain times that a model works better for linear relationships, and it's not going to work for quadratic relationships. Or there are certain times that you have just put in features without realizing that they're related to each other, and the results are going to be all over the place. It's not going to be right. You need to get your fundamentals straight if you want to be a serious ML practitioner, and you need to understand the math behind the problems. So get a structured approach, build it up. Don't jump into deep learning techniques straight away. The second thing that I would like to highlight is that you should really attend conferences, and that is not to say that I'm speaking at the data science conference, so you should attend mine, but you should. But you should attend academic research conferences and meetups, because, again, people are bringing in their own research, and AI solutions as a whole they're more holistic. So an NLP model can be informed by a knowledge graph. A machine learning technique can be informed by a data analysis technique. So when you take a step back and you start consuming all research in totality, sometimes the results that come out of it are much more efficient than using a single solution alone. And the last thing that I would want everyone to do is to make sure that they get their hands dirty. Personally speaking, debugging has been the strongest way for me to learn. The more mistakes I make, the better my learning has been. So make sure that you're making your models, you're creating different scenarios, you're playing with it, you're looking at the results, and really get in there if you at some point you want to be, again, a coder, an individual contributor. Get your hands dirty, play with your models, make a lot of mistakes, and solve them.
Awesome. No, that's such great advice. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing and spending time with us today, Sumedha. And I'm really excited to meet you in person in about 6 weeks in New York. And if you enjoyed this session, you're definitely going to want to see Sumedha in person, because she's going to go really deep into this topic and have a lot more tips and tricks and just really interesting information to share with you guys. So hopefully we'll see you there, and the weather is going to be beautiful in New York. June is a really good month, so it's going to be great. And thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.